So I want to go back to the West Side training because I think that's a good point. Um, so can you talk a little bit about like what the conjugate method is, and then how you utilize it with your athletes, and um, like what are some of the different methods of training that you like to utilize in the context of training athletes with that system?
Yeah, so what we do here is very much a modified type of conjugate system. So most of the athletes that we work with here are younger, so they're middle school, high school athletes, and we know that a lot of the athletes who naturally will gravitate to come and train here are faster athletes. So we're going to have our sprinters, our throwers, we're going to have basketball players, soccer athletes, and then baseball, softball, which is, again, more of an explosive type sport. A lot of these athletes are playing their sport and being explosive and running and sprinting and doing these other things, 5, 6, 7 days a week. So we focus here more on the max effort because we know they're getting a lot of explosive, dynamic work outside of the gym. So what we'll do is we basically cycle through 4 different squatting and benching movements, and we go from 3 reps to 1 rep. So it's sort of if you multiply it, 3 rep, 2 rep, 1 rep times 4 exercises, that's basically 12 weeks. So it's like a 12-week phase, and we'll do very basic exercises, but ways that make them a little tougher. So instead of doing just the standard squat, we'll do a pause squat. We'll do 1 week. We'll do the eccentric squat with a really slow lowering another week. We'll do squats with chains 1 week. And then we will do just the regular kind of a competition, quote unquote, squat. And we'll do 4 weeks of triples, go back, do it again, 4 weeks of doubles, go back, do it again, 4 weeks of singles. And on that 12th week, they'll hit a new 1 rep max. And then we do the same thing for bench, 4 different bench, but nothing too crazy. We're not going, like wide grip chains and bands with weight releasers. Yeah, we don't go too crazy with it. But everything here we do is based on strength and really working towards. And again, it's going to be different for everybody because max effort for a 7th grade girl might be 5 push-ups, where max effort for a senior shot putter might be 335 for a single. So it's going to be a little bit different, but we just try to push them as hard as possible in the strength department here in the gym because we know they're getting a lot of that explosive type movement outside the gym.
And for those that are kind of unfamiliar with that max effort method, basically like the goal of that day is to strain.
Yeah.
And that's going to really just kind of help with building your absolute strength. So, but obviously, like Matt said, if someone's really younger, like their ability to strain, their ability to produce force is going to not be great. But as they get more experience, and you can kind of increase the intensity. And when we say intensity, that's kind of the amount of weight on the bar relative to their 1 rep max. So, and we kind of progress them that way. And I also like to want to highlight what you said about kind of having like isometric, eccentric, concentric kind of contraction. So you're kind of working all the different contraction ability of the muscle. And I think that's really good for also preventing injuries. So yeah. I think that's another thing that people kind of miss too, especially for athletes. Like, and you can comment on this a little bit more since we're not working with powerlifters in this case. So having like some variety, so they're still getting the skill component, right, but some variation where it's kind of to prevent like overuse injuries. So maybe you can comment on like what kind of the benefit of that added variety is for kind of preventing injuries.
Yeah, so I mean, variety is key when you're dealing with younger athletes because they need to, again, they're not competitive powerlifters, so it's not like they have a standard movement that they need to compete in. These are, baseball, football, soccer, track and field, swimming that are in the weight room. So when they get out to the field or when they get in the pool, there's not going to be weights there. So they're going to be using their body all over the place. They're going to be using different planes of motion. They're going to be doing different speeds. Everything is going to always be different. So we like to switch up the movements as much as possible here with the intent of still straining and lifting, as heavy as they can get. We're not pushing to the point of injury. We're going more towards a technical max. So the heaviest weight they can do with really, really good form and technique. And basically what we're trying to do is get it so that they're used to being underweight. Get it so that they're used to pushing themselves to that limit, whatever that might be. And with young kids especially, variety is key. We switch up accessory movements all the time. We switch up the warm up all the time. We switch the type of exercise, the type of main movement that they do, the type of squatting and benching and deadlifting that they do. Changing it up is going to keep them guessing. It's going to keep them very interested in what they're doing, and they're not going to get bored with it, and they're not going to predict what they're going to do when they come in the gym.
I think there's a lot of benefit, not just physically, but like Matt said, mentally as well. It's one of the things that I love about using a lot of some of those kind of conjugate principles, if you will. There's kind of like a method to the madness. There's definitely some scientific kind of evidence for the benefits of it. But yeah, I think just kind of keeping the athletes on their toes and keep them interested, keep them wanting to come back. Because if they're more compliant, if they're more consistent, they want to actually come back to the gym. If it's always just like, add 5 pounds to the bar and it's the same, 3 sets of 5, and that's fine. And I think in a perfect world, we'd love to kind of do, and not knocking like some of these other systems, but like doing like a really basic linear progression. I think in a perfect world would be great, where you just add 5 pounds each week. But I don't think it's always practical for people with hectic schedules, and you don't always get the kids at the same days and the same times. People are really busy, so I think this approach I've found works really well.
You're never gonna get a perfect thing when you're working with athletes. When you're working with athletes, it's you got summer vacation, you've got school vacation, you got sick, or mom can't bring you. Yeah. You're never going to have it perfect. So as long as you know that you're working in the correct general direction, you're making it harder every week in some way, shape, or form, then you know that they're going to see improvement, and you know that they're going to get better over time. It's just you have to make sure that even though it's not a linear progression,
you spread it out,
and you're going to get there eventually. As long as there's a plan in place and you're programmed out a few months in advance, even if they 90% of the time do a great job and 10% of the time they're sick or they miss or they went away for the weekend with mom and dad or whoever, at least 90% of it was really, really good, and they're going to see the benefit from it.
Cool. I could talk about this stuff all day with you.
Same,
it's great.
Yeah.
So, so I wanted to try to. I want to switch gears and bounce around a little bit. So,
yeah.
So you've actually, which is cool. You've been to like some of my early seminars. I've also done like a staff in training here, which was really cool. So our seminars are Powerlifting for the People seminars, and one of the things that I try and do is I try to give the attendees practical drills and information on how they can apply powerlifting principles to whatever sport they choose, whether it's they're a powerlifter or an athlete or just someone who wants to get stronger. So maybe if you can kind of comment on some of the stuff over the years that maybe you've learned from like our system, some of the things that you like that you're implementing now, and then maybe just like how powerlifting movements kind of play a role in like athletic development. Because I think a lot of people might think that powerlifting might get you slow or it's dangerous, and so maybe you can kind of comment on some of the things that you learned from like some of like the workshops that we've done together. And then how like kind of powerlifting plays a role in your program and at your gym.
Yeah, we still use, so many of the things that we learned from, the seminar that you did here. My coaches and I are constantly going back to it. The big thing for us that really, really helped was the warm-up and the idea of sort of the activation versus just sort of like stretching. Actually... And also bracing. Those are probably the two biggest things, because we were getting to a point where athletes really didn't understand how to brace. They were kind of doing it by accident. But to teach them how to brace without anything on their back, or to teach them how to brace without a weight in their hands was huge, because what that did was it allowed them to not only lift more weight, but allowed them to feel more safe and more secure when they are moving weight. We use, even things like, proper technique for benching. Bench press is one of those things that sort of is still seen as like athletes shouldn't bench press.
It's like a bro lift or it's a football lift.
Or you're going to hurt your shoulders and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And it turns into, if you do it wrong, absolutely there's a chance that you could hurt your shoulders. If you've got your elbows super, super wide, if you haven't squeezed your shoulder blades together, if you're not set up properly, yes, you are going to, or you could possibly get hurt. Learning how to do that from your seminar, and not just learning how to do it, but also learning the correct vocabulary that I could use with my coaches has been huge, because even if I'm not working with an athlete, if I'm away for some reason, or if I'm just not in the gym that day and one of my coaches is there, they're going to use the same wording that I use, and it's very much a standardized thing that we have now. So it was a huge benefit. I mean, it was massive, and just the lifts in general. It's amazing when we have our high school athletes that go to college, and then they come back from college, and I said, how are things in the weight room? And they go, oh, good. Like, the weight room coach loves me because he doesn't have to teach me how to do anything. I already knew how to do it.
That feels really good.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely awesome. But no, man. I mean, the seminar was phenomenal. I mean, I've been all over and done seminars, and said I used to speak at seminars, and I used to attend a lot of them, and that's where I kind of learned originally. But the practicality of your seminar, the actual hands-on, and not just sitting in a ballroom in some hotel listening to a guy on stage, but being able to do the events and being able to actually demonstrate and work and do the movements that you were talking about was huge.
Cool. Well, I appreciate the really kind words and great feedback. So I think one of the things I just want to kind of reiterate that Matt said too, like, because I think especially in the powerlifting community, and even with athletes, sometimes we all know the warm-up's important, but I think sometimes we don't really have a purpose for some of these drills. There's so many drills out there for like all the warm-ups and stretches we do, and I think it's really important that we kind of practice the skills, like something like we talk about, like, shoving your knees out or activating your glutes or bracing or engaging your lats and upper back. And a lot of these, it's really hard for kids to kind of understand these concepts. So if we can kind of practice them ahead of time, it makes things so much easier, like when we get onto the bar. So I wanted to kind of continue the conversation and just maybe talk about, like, like we kind of hinted on, like, bench press is dangerous, or squatting with a bar on your back is dangerous. There's even some coaches that say, like, you shouldn't, like, squat on 2 feet at all. Like, you hear all these,
you hear that all the time.
You hear all these things. So what are the benefits of using these compound movements? And like I said, obviously we talked about before, it's got to be like appropriate for the lifter. Like, someone, if they can't do a couple of push-ups, maybe they're not ready to bench press yet. But at some point, like, why would, like, a bench press, a squat, a deadlift, why would these movements, and obviously you may start someone off with a kettlebell or body weight, whatever the case may be. But why are these patterns and why are these exercises a staple in your program? Like, what's the benefit of the compound movements, and why are they so beneficial for athletes?
For me, it's about producing force. I mean, it's all about force development and the ability to put power in the ground. When you look at just all sports have a speed component to them. Even something like cross country, where you're not running super fast, you're running more for endurance. You need to have strength, because that's going to increase the size of your gas tank. Again, we're not trying to promote. I always tell parents and I always tell athletes, it's like when you look at a car. We're not trying to turn you into a Toyota Prius. We're not trying to make you super fuel efficient with a really small gas tank. I want you to be really, really powerful, tons of horsepower with a really big gas tank. That way you'll be able to go longer. You'll have the power, you'll have that giant engine, but a big fuel tank to support the giant engine. And that, for me, is what heavy lifting does for these athletes, is that it allows them to increase their fuel capacity, their work capacity. It gets their tank bigger. That way, when they go out to summer football and they're doing 2-a-days and they're doing these long sessions, they're not dying halfway through the warm-up. They have the capacity to do the work, and they can produce a lot more force through the ground. Charlie Francis, I mean, one of the best, probably one of the number 1 or 2 top sprints coaches of all time, said it best in one of his books. He said, the way that you get faster or the way that you get a sprinter to run faster is you improve their sprinting technique and you get them to put more force in the ground. And that's it. That's all it really is to it. It's about force production, and force production is about moving heavier weight. And when you get the athletes who, they're just starting out and they're really, really good at their sport, but they're really, really weak, a lot of times you say, okay, well, let's get you, instead of spending a week at hockey camp where you're doing the same stuff you've been doing for 12 years, or a week at basketball camp where you've been, doing the same stuff you've been doing since 2nd grade. Let's spend a couple months getting you really, really strong, and then all of a sudden you produce more force to hit the ball farther, kick the ball harder, to check somebody harder, to have a harder slap shot, a faster pitch. That all comes from moving heavier weight.
Well said. I think when it comes down to it, I think if you're not sure, I think get stronger, try and increase your lean body mass, decrease your body fat percentage. And I think all things equal, if you guys are equal in skill, I think the stronger athlete's gonna win if you guys have the same ability level. So
absolutely.
One thing I also want to touch on, and then we'll start to kind of wrap things up a little bit, because like I said, I know we can kind of talk all day on this stuff, which is great.
Yeah.
For in-season training is a big one.
Yes.
What advice do you have? Because I know, I don't know if it's, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know at least for myself, as I've kind of been in the industry longer and longer, it seems like it's harder and harder to get people to train in season. Can you talk about the benefits of it, and then why it's so important to train? Obviously the demand's going to be different, so maybe you can talk about the importance of in-season training and why it's a kind of big mistake that to stop training completely when they're in season.
And it's one of the things we always have to deal with every season is that athletes will leave and they should be actually training during their season. And the biggest benefit of in-season training, and especially when you have a coach that knows how to do in-season training correctly, is that you don't get weaker as the season moves on. If you stop all lifting, and our football players unfortunately are classic for this in this area, is that they work their butts off all summer. Yeah, and it's like they're in their best shape for the first couple games of the season, and then they get midway through the season, and I start hearing from parents that, oh, he's not faster anymore, or he tells me that he's not as strong as he used to be, and they don't have time to go in the weight room after practice. You want to be as strong as possible for the end of the season. You want to be as fast as possible for the end of the season. And if your season's 3 to 4 months long and you stop training at the beginning of the season, about halfway through the season, you're not going to be anywhere near as strong.
It's not if, it's when. They're going to detrain. So I think this would our best wrestlers always train year round, train in season. Because at the end of the day, if your goal is to be a state champion, it's like you want to be at your strongest when you get to the States, not for your first holiday tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's one of those things too where in-season training, especially in a sport like track and field, you need to be at your best for the championship at the end of the year.
Qualifiers, your counties, your state championship.
Yeah, all that stuff's at the end of the season. That stuff's not in the beginning of the season. You don't want to throw a PR at your first meet of the year and then, not ever hit that again. And unfortunately it happens because you see it when you go to a state championship meet. You got somebody who ran a certain time or threw a certain distance or swam a certain speed, and all of a sudden you look back and you go, wow, they did that 6 weeks ago. They haven't even come close to that since. So they qualified at that distance or they qualified at that speed, but they're not going to get anywhere near that at the championship meet. Where the people that actually train during the season and do it correctly, they are at their peak at the end of the season when it actually counts. So there's an old book out there called Peak When It Counts, and it's true. You need to peak when it counts. You can't just randomly have a good game. You need to have your best games in the playoffs. You need to have your best meets, your best matches at the end of the season. You don't want to be like the practice champion. You want to actually do it at the big meets.
Another thing I want to comment, and I agree with everything you said, Matt, was when it comes to a high school athlete, that 4 years goes really fast. If you're taking 3 months off every year, that's a huge chunk of time you're just missing for the overall development of the athlete. So if someone's goal is to perform at their best as a senior, you're just shaving off time that they could be working towards getting better. Because especially if they do want to compete at a collegiate level, 3-4 months at a clip out of the year, that's a big percentage. If you do that times, you're losing a year of training. If you take off the in-season every single time. And if you're a multiple sport athlete, you're losing so much time. So it's really, really critical. Even if it's once a week, one is 100% better than zero. So just do something. It makes a huge difference, especially in the long run. And this goes for if you're an adult listening, if you're, you're better off, like I said, instead of taking a couple of months off. And it's always a lot harder to get back in the swing of things. It's harder to get back in the routines. If you just don't stop, it's better. I'd rather see you do less and be more consistent than do zero. So
absolutely, yeah. You hit on it perfectly. Even if it's 1 day a week, one is better than zero. And at least with 1 day a week, you're going to be able to get in some of the base movements that you need. and keep your body in that kind of zone of strength. And we understand, I mean, in season's tough. I totally get it. There's practice every single day. There's games during the week. But anybody can make it work. We have had in-season athletes drive 30 to 45 minutes away from out of state to come train here twice a week during their season. And we have kids that live a mile or two up the road who quit before they even try because the season starts and they go, oh, I just can't do it anymore. But it's like you didn't even try to do it. You could easily come here, but a lot of times they just don't see the benefit of the training until it's too late. And then all of a sudden they're juniors and seniors and they're going, God, I wish I did this back when I was a freshman or a sophomore. So you got to get in there. You got to get the in-season training as well as the off-season training and peak at the right time of year.
I think it's an old Dan John quote that your behavior's got to match your goals. So if you want to be, placed in the counties, you want to be a state champion, national champion, you got to do the work. And like I said, if you're a champ, you're not going to miss those workouts. And you might need to drive a little extra or sacrifice some time with your friends or some fun times. But if you want to be the best athlete you could be, it's worth it in the end if the goal means something to you. So I know you got the gym rocking and rolling now, so I'll wrap things up. We'll definitely have to do a part 2.
Yeah, definitely.
Before we begin, I want to let people know where they could follow you, and maybe if they're in the Rhode Island area, they can check out your gym. But before we kind of close out, any kind of last words of advice to if a parent is looking for an athlete's looking to start a strength training program?
Yep.
What's one quick piece of advice that they should kind of look for if you could kind of close out with something to give them?
Well, the biggest piece of advice is definitely take a look at the gym that you're thinking about going to. Testimonials are key. Make sure they've had success with their athletes. Make sure they've been around for quite a while. And my advice is always to err a little bit on the side of general instead of specific. So if you have a son who, say, is a hockey athlete, he's probably playing hockey 10 to 12 months a year with summer hockey and travel seasons and all that stuff. The last thing he needs is probably to go to a hockey-specific gym where they're doing things like slide boards and other type of hockey specific training, because he's already playing hockey 6-7 days a week and 10-12 months a year. Find something that's a lot more general to build the base instead of the more specific, trying to sharpen the tip. You got to build the base first, especially in your young athletes. So general more than specific, and then look for results and look for time that the gym has been around. Just make sure it's the right place and it's a good, friendly environment that you want your kids training at.
I love it. It's great advice for anyone listening. So if people are in the Rhode Island area, where can they find more about your gym? And I know also you do online coaching. If there are any track and field people listening, or if they know somebody that could benefit from it, how can they learn more about what you do?
Yeah, so the name of the gym is Primal Training Center. The website is primalatc, like athletetrainingcenter.com. It's got all the information on there about the gym. You can find any information about the throwing by searching Elite Throws Coaching. We are elitethrowscoaching.com. Elite Throws Coaching on YouTube. There's about 700 how-to shot put and discus videos up there. So over the years, we have Elite Throws Coaching camps, seminars, clinics, all that good stuff. Instagram, Elite Throws Coaching. But yeah, check us out. Lots of good free information up there for parents and athletes.
Well, Matt, it was great catching up with you. We'll definitely have to do this again. I'm glad I got to make the trip. And,
absolutely.
Time for me to get my squat on soon.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, we're going for the big one tomorrow.
Yeah, we're trying to get another check mark on the bucket list. But
very cool.
Thank you guys for listening. If you guys enjoyed the podcast, please give it a 5-star review. Especially maybe you're not a parent or an athlete, but if you know somebody who's looking to get their child involved in strength training, this would be a great podcast to share with them. So definitely share it if you feel like it would help them. If you want to support the program, check out the links below. And thank you guys for listening. And until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.